And away we go. Okay, so the audio looks good. So today I'll be building a tiny servo-skull. It's actually going to be a bit bigger than the Imperial variety. We have what I believe is a orc skull, which I'll be using. Here's how it'll scale to our marine. So it's a bit bigger than the usual skull, but should make it a bit easier to work with. And I got some parts I thought would be useful. This is a, I think, Daughters of Cain helmet. I particularly want to use the horns to make the skull a bit more demonic once all the other conversions are in place. Got some mechanical bits to suggest some servo for our servo-skull. I think this is from a Ravenwing biker. I have a Horus Heresy Scouter helmet upgrade, which might be of use. An old tactical squad scope, which I think could be useful for simulating that bionic eye servo-skulls often have. And a Hellblaster cabling, which will serve as the mount for their servo-skull. I shared this kit bash over on Instagram, but the idea is I like this converted backpack. I think it looks pretty cool, but these cables that are defying gravity have got to go. So the idea is this Hellblaster cable will mount our servo-skull, and I think it'll all come together pretty well. And if it does come together pretty well, I'll probably download the stream and cut it into a video for the channel. Maybe add some better voiceover, we'll see. How's it going, Misfit? Just saw your message there in chat. Hope all is well. And as always, the question is, what is on your hobby desk? Or are you just chilling? The reason why I want to do this servo-skull is because I want to give this sergeant, or I guess champion, for Chaos, a bit of swag. But specifically, the plan is to make a plasma team, because I think that would look really cool. So, you know, here he is. I'll try and do a little dry fit here. Right, so this champion's a pretty boss-looking dude. And with that servo-skull, he'll look pretty ace. And then the rest of the members of the squad are all sort of partially painted, or base coated, you could say. But the idea is to have a plasma team, because I think, to be frank, it's kind of dumb that Chaos Space Marines can't just leverage plasma or special weapon teams as a thing. It ought to be a thing. It's kind of stupid that it's not. So maybe I'll do a video on that at some point, from a game mechanics critique sort of thoughts on style video on that issue. Maybe down the road once the squad is painted. Misfit says, I'm not bad. I'm picking through some crew talks before I return to my battle suits. Going to try and bag an a Christmas box this weekend. Interesting. What is the Tau Christmas box? I think it's probably large battle suits. 4 large battle suits, if memory serves. I cannot recall exactly. Okay. Now returning to the task at hand. I think it makes sense to begin with the most fiddly bit. So I want to mount this like radar dish underneath the skull to sort of serve as like a grav impeller, or suggest that anyways. And then I want to mount something on the back of the skull as well. Some mechanics. Maybe I can use this top portion of the Hellblaster cabling. Just socket that in there like that. And then hopefully there's enough space left over to just plastic glue this cabling on. We'll see. Might have to do that first. That'll be interesting. You know what, to start, let's get these cables out. I think that makes sense. We shall see. Like, sometimes conversions don't go as planned. Sometimes you do wreck your babies. The Votan box is my first pick. The Farsight Battlesuit box is second. Oh, is that what it is? A Farsight box? You know, whenever those Christmas boxes show up, I glance at all of them every year. I'm like, oh, that's neat. That's neat. Or that's lame. That's lame. And then I quickly forget the contents and composition of those boxes. Not that I have anything against them. I think I did buy a Space Marines Battle Force box, or Christmas or holiday box a few years back. I think it was an Imperial Fists battle box, and it had like 1 billion intercessors. Okay, that should do. It's fairly clean. You know, with Chaos, you have a bit of leeway to be messy, right? To be a little imperfect. It's a bit more forgiving. Mutations are a thing, right? And this will connect something sort of like this. Let's trim this. I guess I'll clean up this little end piece here first, and then break the cable right here. Yeah, I think that is what we'll do. So it's fairly clean for a break, and it doesn't look terribly out of place. It looks, is it too hopeful to say it looks natural? I mean, you can carve into the geometry here a little bit to make it fit a bit better. I mean, I can move the arms out of the way for now. Yeah, so we have a composition sort of like this is what we're looking at. And then his little Servo-skull buddy will will be hanging out right here, sort of helping him aim, I guess. Providing tactical battlefield data, of course. That's a little crooked. That's not right. And can I just twist and fix? Is that an option? Might have to sort that out. Might have to sort that out. Tau community is upset because of the new Tau stealth datasheets changes. They are locked to 5 units. Not so bad. Loss of shield drones kinda sucks. Loss of fallback and shoot really sucks. That is a bit of a bummer. As far as I was aware, in current 10th edition standards, yeah, the stealth battlesuits are a key support unit for your marker lighting and your guiding and all of that. I'm not sure how the wound breakdowns work, but yeah, if you've lost shield drones, shield drones gave you ablative wounds to the squad, or to the models, right? So I guess if your squad's larger, then maybe the wound differential is the same. It must be worse, I guess, if people are complaining, though. I haven't looked into the new datasheet changes. I am slowly... I don't want to say I'm slowly... I was gonna say I'm slowly checking out of standard 40k play. I still will play it, but I'm definitely more interested in enjoying the hobby the way I would like to, such as building a plasma team for my Chaos Space Marines because I think they should have that. Crazy. You'd think the veterans of the Long War would have the tools that they would and formations they used during said Long War. These days, shield drones, I think, just give an extra wound, if my understanding is correct. Gotcha. Okay. So I think I'm gonna cut into the backpack. I mean, I could cut into the cable. Maybe that's better. Alright, try and do this on stream. See if it's possible. Maybe that's actually... Maybe I thought I would have to remove some of these notches, but it doesn't seem to be necessary. I think that angle might work. We will try it and see. I'm going to use the thin glue first because I don't want to make the surface too mucky right now. We just want to do a bit of a dry fit. So we'll use the thin stuff and see what happens. You see, I don't love that overhang. So I think what'll have to happen is... cut the geometry here, just so that this can nest further in. We can do a little pose test here. Yeah, that's about what I'm after. I mean, more or less. Actually, I want to test that again. Uh-oh. Getting a little too heavy with the plastic glue. Always got to be wary with the thin plastic glue because it tends to run everywhere if you're too liberal with it. Alright, so it's something like this for a final pose. The helmet's just blue tacked in. Excuse me. The helmet is just blue tacked in for now. Yeah, I think that'll work. So we'll just try and cut into this geometry a little bit. Try and get this on camera for you guys. Well, for you guys and for me. We might get some good B-roll out of this. Because that's already looking better from this angle. think that might do it. Fairly natural. I mean, it's a bit overhanging, but I think I can weather it. I think I can live with that. Okay. We'll remove that for now, and that these nacelles are they aligned or are they crooked? You know, this one's definitely higher, which I don't like. We gotta bump that up. We gotta. Yeah, something closer. Closer to, and then we'll get the plastic glue thick. Well, it's not called plastic glue thick. Plastic glue standard, I guess. Symmetrical or what? And these are spare Havoc backpacks, and I think I cut off the nacelles or whatever that were supposed to hang off of them normally. And it was a bit of a crude break, so the surface these are mounted to are a little uneven to begin with, which is making the task at hand a little trickier. I think that's close-ish. Not bad, you say. Not bad. I can work with not bad. As long as it's not awkward. I mean, if this was an orc conversion, I wouldn't fuss too much about it. Okay, we'll see. We'll see. Okay, and then the cable is going to sit like this. Let's hold our breath. Cross our fingers. Whoops. There goes my precisely calibrated positions. Okay. I think we're good. Okay, we'll give that a bit of time to cure. And hopefully it'll be ready to work with once the skull is prepped. So I think I've removed the mold lines from the skull already. Yeah, it looks like it. So what I want to do is get this satellite dish looking piece sticking out, protruding a little bit. So we're going to drill a hole to the bottom of the skull. Yeah, that's where we'll start. And probably here. Try and find the center. Make our little pilot hole. And I'm going to go in with a larger drill, mainly because I have a certain amount of mild PSTD around breaking those thin drill bits. And I really should get a powered hobby drill. Okay, well the position was actually pretty good. But I'll need it to be substantially larger. Yeah, I think it'll look awkward if it's too long. I think I have to mount it right at this wide cap here, which means I need a bigger drill bit. And I did not bring the drills with me. If only have that be. Alright, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna BRB. It shouldn't be too long. Okay, so I think these should be large enough. Should being the operative word. Well, it's closer. Certainly, it might be the right size. We'll give it a try. Oh, Misfit says, well, I need to head to bed. Night night and have fun. Oh, thanks. I missed the message in real time, though, unfortunately. But the sentiment is very much appreciated. Well, the larger drill is way sharper than the smaller one. I guess that shows how often I use that size. Yeah, I think we can work with this. Okay. Let us crack on. Roll that. It's a bit too tight. Perhaps I can embiggen it a little bit. Okay, so it does fit, but still a bit too large. Oh, well, look. Using my great strength, I have wedged it in. Okay, so there's the, I guess, part one of the Servo-skull. and there's still space for this to connect. It's gonna be a little awkward. Let's see what we're working with. Awkward because I should have curved the cable a little bit before gluing it on. I mean, if it comes off, we can always just glue it back on. It's just not loving that I have to put so much strain on the connection point. Yeah, so that should at least look a bit more natural now. Just looking at this antenna or signaling apparatus, there's some interesting geometry here. I'm just wondering if there's other elements I could make use of. Like potentially, this rectangular component could just get slapped on the back. I'll probably leave that to the end, because it'll all depend on how much space is left over once this is glued in. But first, let's give this guy a bionic eye piece, which I think this old tactical scope could serve. Like, I wonder if I could just glue it and put it in place. What's the thickness we're working with? It is thinner. Not by much, though. I think maybe I can use this large drill bit again. Just looking at the size of it, it should work. I want to believe. This is like an ancient bit. An ancient tactical scope. You want to be pretty careful with these sorts of cuts because they tend to fly everywhere. What are we even left with at this point? Okay, so the cut is a little off kilter, unfortunately. Hold on. I can see it, you guys can't. There we go. Well, I am impressed with the camera's ability here, to be frank. But yeah, there's our bionic eyepiece. So, I'm going to try and work with that. We'll see if I'll see if I just ruin the skull. This seems like this seems way too big. Maybe this is a good use of tweezers to do a bit of dry fitting. All right, can I attach this to give him a bionic servo-skull eye? That is the question. I think it looks okay. just start doing some damage here. Just widen up this a little bit. You know what, maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe servo-skulls are supposed to look like they've been radically altered. Right? Maybe that's par for the course. So we can do something kind of, I think that's looking closer to what I want. Okay, we're gonna give it a try. Load it up with plastic glue and just try and place this. I don't think it's terrible, though I do think I have to rotate it a bit. Try to work with that off-kilter cut that I definitely didn't do on purpose, but it might work. This is like the tiniest conversion I've ever tried to do. Okay, I want to use a little bit of the thin plastic cement just to fortify this bond a little bit. The seam, just right in here. And then I wonder if this scouter could also get attached. Something like... Is that too much? Maybe. It might be too much. But if I cut into that cheekbone, it should fit in fine. I'm gonna try it. So looking at this bit, it has a bit of a, it's not flat. It kind of has this this raised section, which I let me move this. That's zoomed in so much, I'm always off frame, it seems. But because this bit has this raised element here, it's kind of not jiving the way I needed to with the surface of the skull. I think this raised element is for the Mark 6 helmets, so that it can nest nicely. So I'm going to try and just smooth that out. We shall see. We shall see if it's possible. Can we make the impossible possible? I feel like that's a meme. Yeah, that's a bit tighter, sort of how I want it. Okay, cool. Cool. Let's just try and weld it up with some glue. Will it bond? Oh. We do need to add something to the back of that bionic eye. It's looking a little awkward. It needs a bit of geometry to sit in there. Just like a smaller cylinder, maybe a rivet like the one on the scope. I actually think that piece could work pretty well. So how do I go about extracting that? Still too big. See? That won't fit. Maybe it's just better off to use this cylindrical piece. Yeah, probably. Right, just cut the end off. It's a bit dark, so it's hard for you guys to see, but just cut the end off. It's about the right size to look like a natural extrusion of the bionic eye. And just stick that in there with some plastic glue and it should look less awkward. Yeah, a piece just like this. And that should fit fine. So the trick is how to do this without flooding the skull with glue. Well, I've tried to put some glue on it first, and I'm wondering if I can just wedge it into place. Yep, that's basically the geometry I'm looking for. Gotta be careful though, or else the plastic's gonna get real mucky. Once everything cures, I can clean it up a little bit, but definitely gonna have to wait for the full cure time for that. Alright, so what's next? We have a horn graft and maybe some mechanical bits for the back, we'll see. I do feel pretty confident that I can do the horn and the... Can I do the horn last? Okay, so actually the way this is going to be positioned is... Is there a position I can hold this guy with tweezers without him flying away forever? Yeah, so he'll be positioned basically on the cable like this. So I think this, I'm not really sure what to call it. It's just a bit of mechanical geometry. I would like to graft this onto the back of the skull. If possible. I maybe should have done this first. we're learning as we go, so sometimes you gotta roll with the punches there. Exploratory surgery, if you will. Okay, let's see if I ruin my Servo-skull if I apply pressure and cut downwards. This is very risky business. Even this isn't really working. I don't think we're ruining anything yet. This is yeah, this is not the order of operations you would want to do normally. Unfortunately, I've already done the work I've already done, so we'll just have to wear any damage that's incurred from this step. We are getting some shifting. Look at that. Okay, we'll adjust everything afterwards. And continue trying to gouge out this section. Okay, well, we got our notch more or less carved out. Now that I have that, I wonder, will it be easier to cut in? Not really. Well, it should be easier to at least shave along that angle and just remove material layer by layer. Definitely gonna incur a bit more warping on the parts already glued, unfortunately. Oh, that was dangerous. That was not a demonstration of knife safety. Alright. I think that should be enough space. How's our Servo-skull looking? We've got some pretty bad drifting of our parts. This might be a good use case for the thin cement. I'm gonna just remove this. Just like that. Okay, we're gonna reglue that afterwards, once we reset our eyepiece. How's it going, Gilhera Misa? That's such a hard username to say. SWAT Drama, I see you in chat. Francois, how's it going? Hey boss, I got something to do tonight. Hope your conversion works well for your Chaos Boys. Oh, thanks, SWAT Drama, thanks. I think it'll turn out, it's a bit of a trial by fire here, but I think it'll go as intended. Gilher Misa says, yo, have you checked out the Battlefield Trophies box? It has multiple Servo-skulls in there. If you still want a kit bash, they could be a good reference bit. Do they really? That's an amazing bit of knowledge you just laid on me. I figured the Battlefield Trophies were just more skulls. I recall there being a slain Space Marine in there. Like the two kin skulls from the Leagues of Votan. Well, the conversion is... I've already committed to it, so I'm going to see this through. Unless it goes terrible and everything falls apart, and I'll cry myself to sleep. But for future Servo-skulls, I'll keep that in mind. And the other option is 3D printing as well. Which is probably a much better time. So I reapply that scouter. Actually, let me make sure the needle has flow. Okay, we're good. That is a lot of plastic glue. Far too much for what I need. Yeah, we're basically where we were before. You know, for the most part. Just tuck that in there. Cool, little Servo-skull. Though I do want to fortify that a little bit. I'll get the thin plastic cement and just apply that in there. Okay, now for this carved out section here, the plan is to use this Raven Wing. I think it's a Raven Wing bike back or something. I think it goes on the back of a bike or maybe the side of a speeder. But I want to take this rectangular section and just slap that in there, paint it metal, should look good. It's a pretty interesting part. Definitely see it having some use for like some converted Necron weapons or AdMech, Dark Age looking weapons. Okay. So I think from here it makes sense to just cut along. And hopefully not too off kilter, but it's always tricky. Yeah, the idea is to cut right through perpendicularly. Did I do it? Close enough. Definitely off kilter though. Look at this. Kind of. You know, maybe we can hide it a little bit. Maybe it can be hidden with a lot of plastic glue goop. Just gonna clean up the edges here. All this extra. There you go, fixed your handle. Rock Brawny, there's a there is a username I can recall. Rock Brawny. Much easier to say. So it's looking it's too big, unfortunately. I liked that part. I can try the Hellblaster cabling I was talking about earlier, but this part looks better. So it's kind of a shame, right? Like this is the back of the Hellblaster cabling, which I figured could also work. Right, just stick that in there. It would look pretty cool. But not as cool, but what are you gonna do? Can only make a Servo-skull so big. So what I'll do is clean this up. It's a bit awkward because these pieces are going to be upward facing. So you want a pretty natural looking metal surface or a machined surface. So it should look pretty even, I think. Though I could put a barrel hole in there and it could look like some sort of servo port. Which could be interesting. But I don't think the Servo-skull will need much more detail than this. Yeah, I can smooth it out a bit more. It could do with some smoothing. definitely the tiniest conversion I've ever tried to do. Is it worth it? Not really. But look, I've already committed. It's an interesting challenge, I'll say that. Lies, there's a giant dragon skull Xeno thing in the skulls box. No reason the CSM wouldn't use that. I could see that, you know what, on a demon engine type conversion or a cool tank Auspex scanner or something. Hook it up to a Land Raiders machine spirit. That could be pretty cool. So we're going to stick that right in there, and I think that'll look good. Will it? Weird apparatus up top? I don't know if I like that. Maybe we drop the apparatus. Just keep it square. A square box with a round dot. So, what's on your hobby disc? Surely, it's more exciting than a Servo-skull. Shorten it a little bit. Actually, maybe not a little bit. Maybe closer to half. An Eldar Phantom Leg. Yeah, that is more exciting. I approve. Okay, let's try this out. We're committing. Oh, GW, why do you make your glue applicator like this? Why must they make it so? There we go. Last step will be to give this, I want to give the skull a horn to make it look a bit more demonic. So I want to take this horn off of this Daughters of Cain helmet. just stick it on sideways, kind of like a plague bearer horn. It's a generic demon skull, or mutant skull, or possessed skull. Pick your flavor. Okay. So we're going to have to cut it like, I mean, a little bit of deformation isn't going to ruin anything. So we have a horn like this. And I just wonder if its curvature is already suitable. I think I wanted to overlap the deformation I cut into the skull to fit that lens in there. I think that might look neat. Definitely wanted to face this way rather than this way because of the pose of the model. I think this might be a good use of sprue glue, but doesn't look like I brought any with me. So I might have to put a fair amount of plastic glue on. Just let that sit for a little bit. Let it stew. So is there any news in the 40K Warhammer community? What do we have here? Featured news, White Dwarf 1995, remember this. Bolt Gun 2. Warhammer World Championships. Nothing really jumping out at me. Okay, let's try and affix this. And we just want to spread it over. I do like the curve of that horn. Okay, while that dries, I'm going to clean up the workspace a little bit. And we'll keep that inside of that ring so it doesn't get lost. And now his backpack should be secured. Should be strong. Okay. With that amount of with that amount of plastic glue, this is never coming out. It's a beefy backpack. I like it. I like it. is Combi Plasma. Oh, what a G this guy is. He looks cool. He should be looking in the direction he's shooting. You know what? I think I'd like to find a use for this piece here. It's such an interesting piece of geometry. Maybe that flat port there? Much too big. Okay, while that backpack cures a little bit, I think I can get some use out of that part I clipped here. And I think I can use it to cap off that other tube connection point for the Havoc backpack. As long as the kilter of this cut is fairly even, it should be okay. It is going to be tricky to cut though. Fairly. It's not the worst. Honestly, not the worst. I tell you, the reverse grip tweezers are so clutch. A must for this sort of work. And that doesn't look bad. Just gotta trim that interior corner. Just gotta trim this. And then once the plastic glue adheres it in place, I can cut against the model. It should be a pretty simple cleanup. Nice. Okay, that's cool. I feel good about that. So that's a lot of plastic glue. Just dabbed some of that away with some paper towel. Yeah, once the plastic glue cures. It should be easy to clean up all that excess thin plastic. Shouldn't be an issue. And now those, they're just not as awkward as just it being so flat there. I think it'll look like a much more natural detail at the bottom of the backpack here. That'll look really cool. Awesome. Okay, so I'd like to believe the backpack has cured enough so that I can secure the servo-skull in place. So we don't have a ton of surface area, that's the problem. Let's just do a bit more dry fitting for sanity. Mullet Burner, welcome to the stream. What's on your hobby desk? This Servo-skull is coming together, I'll tell you. Yeah, we want to sit sort of like that. I may have to resort to some sprue glue for this. I hope not, though. It'd be nice to end the stream in one go. Okay, well, it's... I don't know if it'll be the strongest bond, but we kind of have what appears to be a servo-skull. And it's mostly looking in the same direction as the sergeant or champion here. So you know what? I don't hate how that looks. I don't hate it. It's kind of like a interesting piece, I think. I do have an icon of chaos I'll attach to him in a bit, but we can let that cure for now. Recently finished the Angels of Death from the Kill Team starter set and painted them up as Howling Griffins. I just love the red and yellow quarters. Howling Griffins have a great aesthetic. There's something innately regal, I guess chivalrous maybe is the right word to use, that about your quartered chapters. I think second company, or second founding chapters rather, chapters from the second founding deserve a bit more love, really. I get the first founding is where everything delineates from, but to me, I think you can make a fair argument that second founding is much more emblematic of 40k. And it makes me wonder if the landscape of 40k would have a stronger atmosphere and have a stronger theme if all the first founding chapters were gone. It's like a totally different timeline, obviously, right? But you can imagine if all you have are the successors of those first founding chapters going up against the legions. That creates a much different vibe. And then categorically, you avoid having the Horus Heresy 2 Electric Boogaloo happening, which is creeping its way into 40k. those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts. Yes, we're going to attach this chaos icon at some point. Probably should clean up the workspace a bit. I mean, some of these are good bits. I don't want to lose them. So, and this is the entourage for our champion here. Here, watch me play with my toys on stream. So it's like a plasma team. As one would have if they were veterans of the Long War. They'd have special weapon teams, obviously. Why wouldn't you? It would be almost stupid not to. It'll look like a real cool unit. Oh, one guy lost his shoulder pad. How did that happen? How did that happen? I tell you, it's the old plastic. This guy has an old plastic shoulder pad. Look, it's ancient shoulder pad that I won't want to stick on. From the classic Chaos Space Marines kit, which I think is a fun little Easter egg of sorts. I love how over the top it is. Where 8-foot-tall transhuman super soldiers camo is pointless at this point. I'm with you on avoiding the first founding. So much more out there. Someone on Reddit, I think, made a graphic of all the second founding paint schemes. A lot of inspiration there. Right on. Yep. After I said it, I find it more and more compelling as a landscape of 40k. Right? You don't have. It's just less of a. I just think you're categorically not going to fall into that trap of repeating the Horus Heresy if you don't have the first founding chapters to work with. If you only have second founding. But you know, after this recent preview and all the Ultramarines love, and actually for all the other named chapter heroes that were preceding Titus's reveal. It is what it is. And kind of a... You can't pull back the levers at this point. People have already bought into the first founding chapters as being the face of the present timeline. You would have had to have done it in the shift from 7th to 8th. I think it would have had to have been done. You have your Primaris come out and you make a judgment call. You know, Black Templars are the new poster boys of you pick a second founding chapter. Crimson Fist maybe, right? They're blue. And actually appropriate as the poster boys really for 40k. And then from then onwards, it's second founding status quo. And you can still play your first founding characters and units and chapters, of course, as you could any other chapter. But I think you lose something quintessentially grimdark in having all the first founding chapters still around in their paint schemes. I suppose Dark Angels get a bit of a pass because they're so different from their 40k iteration, or their 30k iteration rather. Mulletburner says, do you have an opinion on what you'd like a Salamander's or Fire Drake's battle force to contain? What was in the Salamander's battle force? Let me see here. Ichi just subscribed. Very cool. Got that little notification there. That's neat. Salamander's battle. I should share my my screen. Salamander's Battle Force. This was... the Salamander's Battle Force. Let me configure the OBS here. 1 minute. That's weird. I thought I had a source already set up for the browser. Oh, there it is. So this was the old Salamander's Battle Force, which I thought was pretty neat. It was 2 upgrade sprues, or it was 3 intercessor squads. Oh no, 2 intercessor squads and aggressors. Oh, and eradicators. And Adrax. I mean, that's not terrible. That's for what I would like. It's a bit weird to look at Salamanders at the moment. 10th edition has characterized them as a transport army. And I'm not opposed to fire trucks, the fire truck theme. But fundamentally, I think Salamanders should be about weathering the onslaught of the enemy, which the current attachment really doesn't let you do. At least not any better than your contemporaries, really. Also, what are you thinking for the bases of these here Chaos chaps? Okay, I see you have a third question there, but I actually have I have some of my other Chaos boys on my hobby desk, so I can actually show you the basing scheme for them. The basing scheme, here's a possessed. It's actually one of my favorite looking possessed. So the basing scheme is a blue muted earth with Chaos runes on their feet, like a ruined temple, sort of ancient Chaos environment. I think I have a raptor here too. His base isn't painted, but you can see a better section of the green stuff rolling pin I used for those Chaos runes. So yeah, it's neat. It's neat. It looks better on vehicles or like my Contemptor and Lord Discordant, Venom Crawlers, any of those large bases, they turned out pretty well. On the smaller models, you can't really make out too much. But yeah, it also helps give the models, well, the Possessed doesn't need the height, but it gives the Marines a bit of height. Here is one who is kind of whip, like a modern Chaos Space Marine, you know, partially painted. So it gives him a bit of height compared to the default body. Though I will say, this body here is a Khorne Berserker. So because it is a special snowflake god-marked legion of the world eaters. I mean, they are generally going to be bigger. They are bigger and better, much to my chagrin, than standard Chaos Space Marines. Super lame, but that's how GW chose to do it. But you can see the height difference it makes, which helps, especially alongside the Loyalists, which for some reason have to be even bigger. It's crazy. So crazy to me. Okay, that should be enough time to glue this guy on here. Oh yeah, you had a third question. Let me see here. Third question, Apolls don't mean to hog the chat. No apology necessary. That's why we're streaming. That's why I'm streaming. Just to hang out with you guys. Have some company while I'm hobbying. Do you ever think you'd knock together some scenery? Evocative, narrative-y stuff, I mean. Not what the L ruins. Yeah, most of my terrain, all the terrain I own is classic, what would be termed as narrative terrain. I do have a bunch of GW stuff. I have some MDF stuff. And it just looks more scenic. I mean, you can see the fruits of those efforts on my extermination mode video. Where it's just, you put it together, create a nice scenic layout that feels narrative, and it just really feels like the stuff wargaming should be about anyways. So I guess, yeah, to answer your question, I have done some scenery stuff, but I haven't done any scenery videos. I don't think I've done any of those. On the aggressors in the Salamander's battle force, Jay from Eons of Battle has just put up an aggressor conversion vid today. A lot of fun. Is that right? I converted all my aggressors to have underslung heavy flamers, because I thought it made them look a bit more like the pyroclasts of 30k, which was a cool look. I think in a perfect world, you know, where your Dark Angels have their Inner Circle companions, and your Space Wolves have all of their special guys, I think your Salamanders would have the pyroclasts. And I think if GW was generous, they'd give a custom datasheet that would allow you to just use those in lieu of aggressors. Just to give you a little something, a little sugar, a little gift. Yeah, we're looking at something like this. Well, if a little tilted forward, I would prefer it a bit more upright. So what is the best way to achieve that? Probably to tilt this. So I'm going to get in here and cut it on an angle and try not to ruin the mounting skulls. Okay, I think that should do it. Or I might have overdone it even. I think we're good. I think we're good. I would like to believe it's good. We'll see. Yeah, you guys probably want to see what I'm doing. Of course. Yeah, just affixing the icon here with a bit of plastic glue. Trying to keep it fairly centered. And this, again, is for a custom unit, basically. It's not, not anything that's legally playable. Legally playable. It makes it sound so serious. It would be for a special weapons team. a homebrew unit, if you will. I probably will put together a data sheet for them and make a video along with my critique, and share the data sheet in that video. But one thing I am struck on is what sort of ability would a special weapons team for Chaos Space Marines have? Now, personally, I don't like every unit having an ability, but it's the paradigm we find ourselves in for 10th edition. So not having an ability is wrong, as much as I don't like it. Really, I feel... Yeah, really, I feel that the value of standard units should be their war gear. That should be what makes them valuable and the utility that they bring, not an arbitrary ability. Like, you can keep abilities for special characters that do certain things, like apothecaries, psychers, right? Maybe hyper specialist squads, like a sniper team. But for a Build-A-Bear special weapon team, what would their ability be? That's the question. So I think it's easy enough to configure the data sheet for the war gear and the stat profiles. You're just working with the paradigm we already have for weapon profiles. But for the ability, it's a bit weird, right? Like Legionnaires, maybe they have the Legionnaire's ability just for ranged weapons. That feels super strong. Reroll wounds if you're attacking an enemy on an objective with ranged weapons. There's a reason why Legionnaires don't have that ability in shooting. Mind you, I think they should have it in shooting and fighting. Okay, I think that's looking fairly center. Maybe easier to tell from the back. Yeah, the Havoc backpacks are pretty cool on your standard Chaos Space Marines, gotta say. Now, this looks a little awkward, the way this just connects like that. It's kind of weird. I do wonder if I can... Once he's holding the gun, do you even see that? Not really. So it's kind of obscured. Mulliburner says, do you ever use your minis to play games? Where was that? Do you ever use your minis to play games besides 40k? I've enjoyed one-page rules, Grimdark Future, and GF Firefight. It doesn't have the same design space. Equally, it doesn't have the rules bloat. Yeah, I have played some... To answer your question, I am open to play other game systems with my miniatures besides 40k. I take much issue with standard 40k rules management and rules design, to be honest. I've played a few games of one-page rules and vastly enjoyed it much more because I find it to be just a stronger game design and yielding an overall better game experience with your time spent on the tabletop. It does lack certain specific flavor that you would like to have, so there are some trade-offs, but on the whole, I think it's better. And I'm sort of working on an experiment myself, just to have my own game mod of sorts, or game mode is a better term, for playing with my miniatures beyond standard 40k. By the way, sorry I missed the start of the stream, but on the Servo-skull dude, did you print this helmet or is it from a supplier? This helmet is printed, and I think it's from... I bought it off of Cults. I think from Red Warden. I could be mistaken, though. I have to double check. If you DM me on Discord or Instagram, I can double check for you later. For the heavy weapon team, would you want their shooting to do some morale effect? Reduce the target unit's total OC by some number. Reducing OC as an ability is an interesting design space. You don't see it much. You don't see GW dip into that area. It's a weird balance to find with homebrew rules, right? Because you want it to fit within the Overton window, so to speak. But you also want it to be fun and interesting. And sometimes those two are contradicting each other. But for a shooting unit, I don't know. I don't like the idea of playing with OC. If you're already dealing damage and removing models, you are going to worsen a unit's OC. And typically, when you have units that worsen OC, it's always to a minimum of 1, which is usually reducing a squad of 1 to 1, in most cases. But I appreciate the suggestion. It's tricky. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do for the homebrew datasheet for a special weapons team. For this squad right here. Something... Maybe it'll be something very boring like what the Devastator squad has for Space Marines. Ignores cover. Like when this unit makes a Dark Pact, ignores cover. Then all your ranged weapons, regardless of which you choose, will ignore cover. But mind you, Flamers already ignore cover, so now we have a rules overlap, which I don't like. Alternatively, for the heavy weapons team, could you do reduce the target's movement characteristic by X, where X is half the number of wounds inflicted, rounding down? I don't hate the idea of pinning fire from a heavy weapons team. I think that is thematic. However, I'm not going to be doing a heavy weapons team homebrew datasheet, because effectively that's what Havocs already are. And I think Havocs have the ability to ignore BS and hit modifiers, if I'm recalling correctly. So, yeah, I'm trying to find an ability that would work well for Meltaguns, Flamers, Plasma Guns, basically your special weapon options that you would expect Chaos Space Marines to have access to. Whereas the Havocs have the heavy weapon options. I don't know. I'll have to put some thought to it, but yeah, that's about that. I can't really configure the workspace for painting midstream. Just takes too much effort, and I think we're pretty far into the stream to pivot that way. Is there anything cool I can show? What else do I have here? I have some cultists. Cultists are boring. And these aren't very nice cultists either. They're old. They're old and ugly, but they're cultists, so I don't mind. I do have my Artel Freerin I've been painting, which is a pretty nice model. So I don't think I have posted this version with the white materials having layers and the yellow materials having a tan base coat to Instagram, so that's something. It's a nice model. I love the idea of an Ulthwé Seer Conclave. So I have like these old... Here's an old Wraith, a Bone Singer. I think it's an old Bone Singer. I mean, it's metal, so it is heavy. But I gave this guy a little dragon familiar, which is pretty neat. But I don't even know if his eyes are readable. It's going to be kind of hard to paint. But yeah, an Eldar Seer Council, an Ulthwé specifically, Seer Council I think would be really neat. Bright green bases, something like that I think would look really good against their black and tan armor scheme. What about you can give all this unit's weapons benefit, but also hazardous? Weapons that already have hazardous get worse version of hazardous instead. Feels very chaos to offer a dangerous wager. You know what, Mullet Burner? That might actually be the way that goes. Because I think you're right. You do want it to feel uniquely chaos, right? If the Loyalists had a special weapons team, they certainly wouldn't have an ability like that. I'd probably gate it behind a Dark Pact and treat it like the Forge Fiend. When you Dark Pact, you can choose to activate this, gain Dev Wounds, but instead of Dev Wounds, you pick something else. Maybe +1 attack? That's spicy. But it's not Dev Wounds, so you can still save it. Yeah, +1 attack is very spicy. You know, you have a 5-man Melt-A-Gun team? Jeez. Not sure what the benefit would be to offset hazardous. Yeah, often you see the benefit being devastating wounds. The problem with Chaos Space Marines is because you've built in Dark Packs to offer either lethal or sustained, as soon as you give that ability, you can't use those universal special rules in your unit abilities because you can always get it from your army rule. So it kind of limits the design space available. Like for units in that regard. Or you know what? See, the way I would like Dark Packs to work, in fact, the way I would like all lethal hits and sustained hits abilities to work, is I would like them to be able to layer. If you already have sustained 1 on a heavy bolter, and you have a stratagem that gives you sustained 1, it stands to reason to me that you should have sustained 2. Same with lethal hits, except you can only auto wound once, so I think the logical through line there is you increase your AP. So perhaps that could be worked in to the ability here. It's effectively how I would like the weapon abilities to work. They should stack. So maybe that's what the special weapon team can do. They are weapon experts, after all. And then, you know, you get hazardous for being able to double dip in that way. It's pretty cool. You know, sustained 2 with your plasma? Sustained 2 with your Melt-A-Guns? Oof, that's scary. Where are we at? I guess we just hang around for a bit. I just have some time. I do have some time to burn. Here's another Chaos Space Marine with, it's actually a Khorne Berserker base. It's a Khorne Berserker with a Chaos Space Marine arms, and I think a Death Guard helmet that's been cleaned up a little bit, and a Death Guard backpack. And I think it creates a pretty cool miniature. Yeah, the belt-fed bolt gun has such swag. It's so cool. But bolt guns are trash because the rules are bad. But I still like them. You know? They have such style. And they're such a chunky design for a firearm. It's much better than the bolt rifle, in my opinion. More classic. It's hard to read the models that are all primed. They don't show up well on camera. Your heavy weapon gunner for your kill team or your Chaos Space Marine squad. Very cool. Dig in the cleaned up Death Guard helmet. Right? It is cool. Here's another Nurgle, half Nurgle guy. I think this is a chosen body with a Death Guard Power Fist, helmet, and icon. But I don't like the golden fist. I want to turn everything back to like a burgundy. I think it takes away too much. Yeah. My word bearers are all partially painted. Which is weird, because of all the armies in my collection, in 10th edition 40k, I'm probably most satisfied with the Chaos Space Marines army rule from a thematic and mechanical assessment, and like point of analysis. But on the flip side, I'm probably most disappointed with the word bearers' support as it relates to detachments. So I guess actually that explains why there's not much painting going on there. Correction: X mortal wounds to yourself. Above should be X mortal wounds to this unit. Yeah, I like the bright green glowing elements for the word bearers. I think really, I think GW has a missed opportunity in characterizing the word bearers and helping them stand apart from feeling so generic, unfortunately. At least as it relates to aesthetics. Because like the Night Lords and their lightning etched armor, I think the word bearers have a real aesthetic identity in the glowing runes. Especially if they are the first heretics. It seems on brand. And so that's what I've done on my word bearers that I have painted, which right now is only this guy who's easily accessible. The rest are in my transport. But on this note, guys, I think I'm gonna wrap up the stream. I guess we should end on a little showcase of our guy, right? That makes the sense. The Servo-skull came together. I think it's decent. You know, it's a a little weird, maybe. If it breaks off, I'll tell you for free. If this connection point breaks, I am going to apply it with some sprue glue, and that should help kind of blend the connection between those two components. But I think I think it's working. This is just blue tacked on, so I can just position it freely. But yeah, I think it'll be a cool looking squad leader, honestly. This guy looks pretty rad. Probably a favorite of mine as it relates to the word bearers. It's a unique backpack, a little bit of conversion detail here. Oh, that is one thing I said I would do, right? I did say I would clean up the excess. I also said it would be easy, but maybe those are famous last words. There's a little bit of... It's probably fine. Right, like that kind of gap, I think it might be cope, but I think it could be said it adds character. Those sorts of imperfections. Yeah, but anyways, yeah, here's our guy. Looking pretty cool. We'll see. I may turn this stream into a cut down build video. We'll see. But anyways, thanks to everyone who stuck around. You guys are the real hobby heroes. And of course, thanks to the patrons and channel members. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.